Hello and good evening. India and Australia will be holding their first ever 2+2 dialogue tomorrow, which is expected to put strategic cooperation on both the Indo-Pacific and Afghanistan on center stage. We'll tell you more about it on Newsnight tonight. I'm Gautam Roy. We'll also be talking to our guests about the worsening situation in Afghanistan under the Taliban, which is sending mixed signals to the international community about how it will take things forward with the Afghan people and the world, and whether this deceit will work or not. But first, our headlines. Australian Defence Minister Peter Dutton meets Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh a day ahead of the inaugural India-Australia 2+2 dialogue. Extensive talks held to take bilateral ties forward. Rajnath Singh says both countries are ready to realize the full potential of their comprehensive strategic partnership. Dutton says Indian leadership is essential for Australia's Indo-Pacific strategy. Prime Minister Narendra Modi chairs a key top-level meeting to assess the COVID situation in the country. The PM's briefed about the augmentation of healthcare infrastructure. States are asked to maintain buffer stock of medicines in every district. The PM reviews production, supply and pipeline of vaccines for the next few months. The BJP revs up its preparations for the Uttar Pradesh elections. Party chief JP Nadda is set to roll out Booth Vijay Abhiyan starting Saturday. BJP's health volunteers will lend a hand in the vaccination drive in the country on Prime Minister Modi's birthday on the 17th of September. The stage is set for the holding of key by-elections in West Bengal for 2 assembly seats. Mamata Banerjee files her nomination papers for the Bhawanipur seat. The BJP fields lawyer and post-poll violence petitioner Priyanka Tibrewal against the Chief Minister. Says Mamata will also lose in Bhawanipur like she lost in Nandigram. Key decisions taken at the 185th meeting of ESIC. Union Labour and Employment Minister Bhupendra Yadav says all districts will be connected to the ESIC hospital network. Atal Bimat Vyakti Kalyan Yojana extended up to June 2022. 2 new 100-bedded ESIC hospitals to come up in Karnataka, 7 new dispensaries in Kerala. DD News is the nation's most trustworthy news channel. Survey conducted by the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism puts DD News at the #1 spot. The survey puts the channel miles ahead of others in delivering accurate and reliable news. The 5th and final test between India and England called off due to COVID. Window for holding the final test of the series to be worked out mutually between the BCCI and the ECB. India leads the series 2-1. And the festival of Ganesh Chaturthi begins nationwide with chants of Ganpati Bappa Moria. COVID protocols will have to be followed strictly during the celebrations of this 10-day-long grand festival. President, Vice President and Prime Minister greet the people on the occasion. Several leaders begin the festivities with their families. Well, India and Australia are set to hold their first ever 2+2 ministerial dialogue tomorrow in New Delhi, which is expected to put strategic cooperation at center stage, both in the Indo-Pacific and in Afghanistan. Ahead of the 2+2, Australian Defence Minister Peter Dutton met his Indian counterpart Rajnath Singh today, after which it was declared that the two countries have decided to work together to realize the full potential of their comprehensive strategic partnership. Here's more.
Ahead of the India-Australia 2+2 ministerial dialogue on Saturday, Australian Defence Minister Peter Dutton met Defence Minister Rajnath Singh in New Delhi on Friday. After the meeting, addressing a joint press conference, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh said that India and Australia agreed to work jointly to realise the full potential of India-Australia comprehensive strategic partnership. Defence Minister said that partnership between India and Australia is based on shared vision of free, open, inclusive and rule-based Indo-Pacific region.
हम दोनों इंडिया ऑस्ट्रेलिया कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप की सभी संभावनाओं को साकार करने के लिए संयुक्त रूप से कार्य करने के लिए उत्सुक हैं। यह पार्टनरशिप फ्री, ओपन, इंक्लूसिव और रूल बेस्ड इंडो पैसिफिक रीजन के हमारे शेयर्ड विजन पर आधारित है। ऑस्ट्रेलिया और भारत दोनों के इस क्षेत्र में शांति, विकास और व्यापार के फ्री फ्लो, रूल्स बेस्ड ऑर्डर तथा आर्थिक विकास करने में महत्वपूर्ण हित है।
Defence Minister said that discussions focused on bilateral defence cooperation and expanding military engagements across services, enhancing defence information sharing, cooperation in emerging defence technologies and mutual logistics support.
हमारे बाइलेटरल डिफेंस कोऑपरेशन और सेनाओं के बीच मिलिट्री एंगेजमेंट्स में विस्तार करने, डिफेंस इंफॉर्मेशन शेयरिंग को बढ़ाने, इमर्जिंग डिफेंस टेक्नोलॉजीज और म्यूचुअल लॉजिस्टिक्स सपोर्ट में सहयोग करने पर केंद्रित थे।
Australian Defence Minister Peter Dutton said that India's leadership is central to Australia's Indo-Pacific strategy.
India's leadership is central to Australia's Indo-Pacific strategy. It is in the sovereign interests of us both to align our strategy, our capability and our resources. And so today we have continued to work towards enhancing Australia's posture in the Indian Ocean region by ramping up our Air Force cooperation, our maritime engagement and exercises.
Both sides noted with happiness that Australia joined the Malabar exercise in 2020. This meeting between the defence ministers of both the nations ahead of the 2+2 dialogue to be held on Saturday will take the India-Australia defence partnership to greater heights. Bureau Report, DD India.
Now, the Taliban are sending contrasting signals to the world, keeping everyone guessing about what the future holds for both the Afghan people and the rest of the world. While it let a chartered flight depart from Kabul airport for Doha filled with foreign nationals who wanted to exit the country, reports of beating and torturing women and even journalists keep coming in. Even UN employees are being threatened and harassed, preventing them from doing their humanitarian work. India has been constantly sharing its concerns about the situation on the ground in Afghanistan, as well as world bodies, keeping a constant pressure on both the Taliban and the world community to do the right thing.
An all-pervasive atmosphere of fear persists in Afghanistan, but protest and opposition against the Taliban is also rising ever since its takeover, with more reports of Taliban fighters beating and torturing women and journalists. Dissent and defiance are getting stronger. Viral images on the internet of two video journalists beaten black and blue by Taliban fighters for filming a women's protest have led to global outrage, apart from riling opposition voices at home.
People feel threatened because they do look scary. Obviously, when children and women see them, they would be afraid of them because their previous government was very terrible. They must have a good face, a good order, a good system, so that people won't feel threatened by them.
Terrorizing and torturing isn't just confined to journalists and women. Even employees of the United Nations working in Afghanistan are claiming harassment. UN Secretary General Special Representative on Afghanistan, Deborah Lyons, said that threatening and harassment of UN employees by Taliban fighters is coming in the way of their work to help the Afghan people.
We are, however, increasingly worried by the growing number of incidents of harassment and intimidation against our national staff. We will continue to do everything possible to support our staff and keep them from harm's way. The UN cannot conduct its work that is so essential to the Afghan people, if its personnel are subjected to intimidation, fear for their lives, and cannot move freely.
Nobel Peace Prize laureate Malala Yousafzai has also appealed to the UN Security Council to protect the interests of Afghan women and girls.
A united Security Council speaking with one voice for girls' education can compel the Taliban to make real concessions. This is vital not only for Afghan women and girls themselves, but for long-term security in the region and our world.
In a discussion in the UNSC on Thursday, India's permanent representative to the UN, T.S. Tirumurti, said that the ongoing situation in Afghanistan is worrisome for India as an immediate neighbor and friend.
The situation in Afghanistan continues to be very fragile. As its immediate neighbor and friend to its people, the current situation is of direct concern to us. Uncertainties abound about the future of the Afghan people, as well as about sustaining and building on the gains achieved over the last 2 decades. In this context, we reiterate the need for the voices of Afghan women to be heard, aspirations of Afghan children to be realized, and the rights of minorities to be protected. We call on humanitarian assistance to be provided urgently and underline the need to provide unhindered access to UN and other agencies in this regard.
Ambassador Tirumurti urged the international community to stand with the Afghan people.
Afghanistan has already seen enough bloodshed and violence in recent years. We call on the international community to come together, rising above any partisan interests, to stand together with the people of Afghanistan in their desire for peace, stability, and security in the country. We need to enable all Afghans, including women, children, and minorities, to live in peace and dignity.
For the first time after the exit of US and allied forces, a chartered flight carrying 200 foreign nationals reached Doha after taking off from Kabul. The flight had several US, British and Dutch citizens on board. All the 3 nations thanked Qatar for the safe return of their citizens. US State Department welcomed the development. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken had recently urged his Qatari counterpart to help in the safe return of foreign nationals from Afghanistan during his visit to Doha. Blinken also spoke to his Qatari counterpart over phone after the safe landing of the flight to express his country's gratitude. UK Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab also thanked Qatar for its role in the safe return of 13 British nationals. Meanwhile, the UN has warned that freezing billions of dollars of Afghan government funds to deny access to the Taliban may lead to economic distress in Afghanistan, which can push lakhs of Afghans deeper into poverty and starvation. Bureau Report, DD India.
And that brings up our In Focus tonight, which is World echoes India's concerns on Afghanistan. And to talk about it, we have Amber Singh, former Indian ambassador to Afghanistan, as well as Sushant Sareen, a well-known strategic expert and senior fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. Welcome to you both and good evening. First to you, Amber Singh, what do you make of how the Taliban is acting and the kind of concern that is being expressed not just about India, but look at what the UN representative had to say, the Secretary General's representative had to say about how the Afghan nationals who work for the UN are being harassed there, and of course the images that have come of viral images of journalists, video journalists being beaten up and tortured.
Or they were expected to behave. To believe anything otherwise would have been sort of suspension of your own intellect and belief. You can see it in various ways, the way they are treating the ethnic minority, the way they have treated women, the way they are treating the entire business of forming the government, which is monochromatic, which basically follows the principle of victor takes it all, and the fact that they have not been able to make that government on their own. They needed Pakistan's intervention to make sure that portfolios were distributed as per a certain formula which gave primacy to the Haqqani network and downplayed the original Taliban from the Kandahar. So these are all issues that sort of one could have foreseen, but basically the way they are going about in terms of creating sharpening the ethnic divisions, I think they are sowing seeds of their own fragility and a short-lived government. And of course, this is a great concern. What they have allowed is letting foreign nationals leave.
Yes.
But remember one thing, that obviously we don't want to hold them hostage, but the people who have worked with foreign organizations are still under tremendous threat there. Over to you.
Now, Sushant Sareen, what do you make of this you think it's a mixed signal, the way that they're letting these foreign nationals leave the flight, taking off for Qatar and landing safely in Doha, or is it something of a quid pro quo there being worked out? Because some people are saying that the Taliban wants their funds to be released, especially the ones in the US, billions of dollars, which is why they're being nice. They're playing nice for now, and of course they will show their true color sooner or later, which they already seem to be in certain other aspects.
Precisely, Gautam. See, I think their true colors, as Ambassador Sinha has said, what people were expecting from the Taliban. I don't know what world people were living in, what they were smoking or drinking when they thought that the Taliban are changed, the Taliban, there's a new Taliban, Taliban 2.0, all the other nonsense that we had been fed for so many years. This is precisely what was going to happen. But I think on the substantive part of your question, I suspect that it is a somewhat calibrated approach. They don't want to show that they are, actually holding these people hostage, but they're letting them go out in dribbles. So I think they're calibrating it and trying to, use that time to try and negotiate whatever money they can get or their Afghan resources which are there in American banks, how they can get those released. That is one part of it. The other thing is that, I think we need to question certain assumptions as far as the Taliban are concerned. And one of those assumptions, and I'm not saying that what I'm going to say right now is actually the reality, but I think we need to ask these questions. Are the Taliban really looking for, let us say, legitimization or validation from the Western world? They might be looking for some money, they might be looking for some kind of their resources being released.
Right.
But are they really looking for validation from them? I think the way I'm looking at it, the Taliban think that they really don't need it for a very simple reason, that the Pakistanis are there, the Chinese are apparently all in, and Uzbekistan has already said they are willing to do business. Qatar is very much, enamored of the Taliban. And there are other Arab countries which are at least making some kind of an outreach to Pakistan and might not be averse. So maybe the Taliban are saying that, okay, fine, let us get what we can out of these guys, the Western folks, and then let us see, let us see how, our relations with the rest of these guys work out. And the way the rest of the world is responding or reacting or trying to reach out or, trying to actually reach out to the Pakistanis, imagining that Pakistan is actually the colonial power in Afghanistan now, makes me believe that somehow the world is seeing that Afghanistan, until and unless they are in Afghanistan, they will be left isolated, they will be left alone in the world. I don't know where this thing is coming from. At the end of the day, Kabul is not, or Afghanistan is not Saudi Arabia with oil or minerals. Afghanistan has virtually nothing to offer to anybody. The Afghans are good people. One would like to support them, defend them. One would like to, see them live in peace and stability and not live under the yoke of the Taliban.
Okay.
But beyond that, to imagine that Afghanistan is the center of the world and everybody needs to be in it, otherwise they'll be left out. Frankly, I can't understand where that is coming from.
Okay, let's take that to Amar Sinha. Amar Sinha, clearly there is something that one is not really seeing, at the face of it. There is something in the background which is not real itself, because we perhaps will see the world react in a certain way to what the Taliban is doing. Till the time there are still Westerners there, people from other countries there who need to get out. Things might change after that, things might not change after that, depending on which country, which set of people want from Afghanistan. Not the Taliban per se, but from Afghanistan. Could you take that forward, please?
Yes, I agree with what Sushant said. You see, there's a lot of play acting happening right now, both on part of the Western countries who want a narrative to sort of camouflage their defeat and their rout and their departure from Afghanistan. On behalf of Taliban, they also want the world to believe that they have changed, they are interested in governance, they are a nationalist force. But increasingly, it would appear that this is becoming a wholly owned subsidiary of Pakistan, with the Haqqani network in really the driving seat. And of course, they are also this great carrot. If you see that they have said that this is a caretaker government, it is basically telling the world to believe that, oh, better things are awaited, don't lose your patience, we will have a very inclusive government. But this is again make-believe, because even 1996 government was called interim till people forgot about it, and that's what they're hoping on. And to an extent that they want to emerge as a modern nation, I think that is a good question that needs to be asked. Or do they just want to be a group with an ideology in control of a territory, which then becomes a basket case, and there are mentors and patrons who will fund them. There are nations who have sort of supported rogue countries and rogue territories. So I think that could also be a scenario developing in Afghanistan.
Okay. The other thing, Sushant Sareen, is that one red line is pretty much set for Taliban and Afghanistan, is that their territory should not be used by any sort of a terrorist entity to target particularly anybody else outside anywhere. India has been saying that time and again, and perhaps we need to build upon this further, because what is happening is gradually, as Amar Sinha also said, Pakistan is taking over. Pretty soon we'll see that that is Pakistan, which will be running perhaps even Afghanistan's economy. They'll be trading with them. That's the proposal, that they'll be trading them with their own currency.
Yeah, so look, and I think this is the biggest problem, and I think this is where on this particular clause, I think where the obtuseness of the West, especially the woke Western diplomats, including Khalilzad and others, comes out. They simply haven't understood what the Taliban are all about. Number one, look, let's not forget that in 2004, we got a similar assurance from the Pakistanis. How has that, right? Did terrorism stop? Did the Pakistani soil stop being used for export of terrorism into India? So clearly it is a similar formulation as far as the Taliban are concerned. Number one. Number two, the Taliban are taking a very, very literal interpretation of that particular agreement which they've signed. Now that agreement does say that they will not allow their soil to be used against any other country. But the problem is twofold. One, that they haven't said that we will not let terrorists from all other countries come and stay in Afghanistan. And we are already seeing a lot of them already there. We are hearing of many terrorists from around the world trying to make a beeline into Afghanistan. Now the route probably will be Pakistan, which loves these kind of guys. So that is one problem. The other problem is even more serious, which is that technically, or very literal interpretation of that agreement, if supposing some terrorist group is sitting in Afghanistan, it plans a particular attack, and then goes out of Afghanistan to execute that attack, which is bound to happen. They will go out of Afghanistan to execute that attack. Will that attack have been done from the Afghan soil? I don't think so. I think if you take a very, very literal interpretation of what and the way the Taliban are looking at it, they will say that this has nothing to do with us. Somebody must have sat in some room, planned something, then went outside Afghanistan. When he went outside Afghanistan, we were not responsible for it. It was your job to stop it. What do you do in that case?
Why did the aftermath to 9/11 happen then? But that is again a facetious argument till it happens. But till then, what has happened, Amar Sinha? Do we see the world right now engaging with the Taliban just because it has to, it's forced to, and things might change when the situation changes, when people have been extricated, those who are stuck there? Do you think then Taliban-led Afghanistan will be treated as a pariah state, and those engaging with it will also bear some consequence of it?
Well, I don't know what will happen, but one thing looks sure, that in the next couple of weeks, you will see that a large number of these terrorists who are on different terror lists, including the UN Security Council, there will be a rush to unlist them and normalize them. because half the cabinet is on the UN terror list.
Yes.
A lot of bounty money sort of floats on their heads. I wonder who will collect it, whether it will be the individuals who appear in public now, they will themselves will collect those bounties, or it will be given to somebody in the ISI. I'm not very sure. But there is an unseemly haste in the international community to somehow normalize it, but obviously it means that the global consensus on terrorism seems to have broken down. The message and the concern that emanates for India is from this fact that now each one will have to deal with terror on his own. And I think that is what we need to sort of prepare for. And the question whether Taliban territory will be used by foreign terrorists is, I think, it's a question which is best answered by another question. Do you think Haqqani network will shut down its Club Mediterranean for terror that it has run there since 1973, which was before the Soviets came? I don't see that happening. In fact, they would like their business empire to grow as they assume more power in Kabul. So it will continue, and unfortunately, us and rest of the world will pay for its follies sooner than later.
Then what happens to Sushant Sareen, those people who want a different sort of Afghanistan, who enjoyed it for 2 decades, and then they see this happening, and now they're trying to protest on the street, but even that voice is being suppressed?
I think that repression and suppression will apace. It will only become worse going forward. That is the Taliban culture. I don't know why anybody expects it not to be that. I think right now, like I said, that they are trying to calibrate their actions. But that's a temporary phenomena. But even that, I think their patience is running low. They're trying to make some kind of a legal framework under which they will legally ban these kind of protests and bottle this up. We've seen, as you reported earlier, we've seen the way the kind of treatment they've meted out to those journalists. We've seen how they have actually beaten up women protesters. We have seen how a woman walking on the street is whipped by the Taliban, and nobody even bats an eyelid. So I think we will see more of this going forward. But Gautam, just one thing which I wanted to add to your last question to Ambassador Sinha.
Right.
Even if supposing after the evacuation process is completed, whoever could go out has gone out, let us say it will happen in a couple of weeks. There are two things which worry me. One, that if you are only going to be sanctioning Afghanistan, I don't think
it won't serve the purpose.
It won't serve the purpose.
Yeah.
You have to sanction the country which is behind the Taliban, and unless you are going to do that, which I don't think they will do, from whatever we are hearing from Washington and other capitals, Western capitals, I don't think that is going to happen. But until and unless you're going to do that, you are simply going to perpetuate this problem. So that is one problem. The other one is the one which Ambassador Sinha has highlighted. When you look at the kind of statements which are coming out of the US State Department, that when a cabinet of terrorists is formed, they are worried that women have not been included in it. They are not worried that terrorists have been included in it. So, that tells you something. When you see other statements from these guys, it all leads me to believe that, as Ambassador Sinha is saying, they are going to normalize these people. They are going to say that, look, we will now cooperate, which they have already said. We will now have a security intelligence cooperation with the Taliban. The Taliban includes Haqqani network. Haqqani network is very closely linked to Al-Qaeda. So Al-Qaeda suddenly becomes the good guys, good Al-Qaeda versus bad ISKP. ISKP is a figment of imagination mostly. It is a small terrorist organization, not the kind of global threat which it is being made out to be. But you use that, you portray it as a global threat, as a major regional threat, and then you justify getting into bed with the Taliban. Okay, I think that is the other concern. If that is going to happen, then, for the Americans to say that we will fight against terrorism, when you are going to be in bed with the terrorists, how are you going to fight terrorism? What terrorism are you going to fight? I don't know.
Yes, that is a big question indeed, and that is a question that still remains to be answered. At the same time, India has to do its job. It has to keep, drawing and appealing to the conscience of the world and all these powers that we are in fact partners with in so many respects at strategic levels. Ambassador Sinha, that does indeed seem to be the job for us right now.
Yes, and to answer your last question, how much do they care about international opinion? Well, when they have chosen September 11 for the formation and announcement of the swearing in of the government, I think that says a lot. But basically, we have come a full circle here. US have achieved, I think, what environmentalists call, leave it as you found it policy. So we are really starting with a blank slate all over again. And yes, we see with this end of global war on terror that the global consensus of terrorism, as I said, has finished. So it is for each one of us to fight our battles. Many countries have done side deals with Taliban, have got bilateral assurances with which perhaps they are comfortable for the time being. We don't have that guarantee, and our focus will have to be to make sure that how the fallout from Afghanistan doesn't affect us in any substantial manner. But of course, it remains a matter of great concern.
And we'll keep raising that issue again, and we have many avenues to do it and keep the pressure going as well on that front, even in terms of the domestic environment in the US. If we have to, I'm sure that is something that can be arranged as well. Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment, Ambassador Sinha, as well as, of course, Sushant Sareen. Okay, now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi chaired a high-level meeting to review the COVID-19 related situation. The topics covered included a review of the prevailing scenario, preparedness of the health system to respond, availability of medical oxygen, and matters relating to production, supply and distribution of COVID-19 vaccines. It was also discussed that across the world there are countries where the number of active COVID cases continues to remain high. In India too, the figures from states like Maharashtra and Kerala indicate that there can be no room for complacency. However, the weekly positivity rate was at less than 3% for the 10th consecutive week. The PM was briefed about the concentration of cases in a few geographies, districts with high test positivity, as well as the week-on-week test positivity rate in the country. The PM reviewed the status of augmentation of bed capacity for pediatric care and augmentation of facilities supported under COVID Emergency Response Package 2. The PM was also informed about the states being asked to maintain a buffer stock of drugs used in the management of COVID-19, mucormycosis, MISC at the district level as well. The PM was briefed about the increase in isolation beds, oxygen beds, ICU beds and pediatric ICUs and pediatric ventilators. A significant number of ICU beds and oxygen beds will be further added in the coming months. The PM spoke about the need to ensure adequate testing across the country as well. Officers informed the PM about the support being given to 433 districts to establish RT-PCR lab facilities in public health facilities. On vaccines, the PM was apprised that around 58% of India's adult population has received the first dose and around 18% of India's adult population has received the second dose. The PM was updated about the vaccine pipeline and increased supply of vaccines as well. Now, in a landmark achievement, India's COVID-19 vaccination coverage has achieved a nearly 73 crore mark on Friday. More than 56 lakh vaccine doses have been administered till 7 p.m. on Friday. The daily vaccination tally is expected to increase with the compilation of the final reports for the day by tonight, late at night. The vaccination exercise as a tool to protect the most vulnerable population groups in the country from COVID-19 continues to be regularly reviewed and monitored at the highest level. And meanwhile, to provide a proof of vaccination for each of these individuals, CoWIN is already issuing a digitally verifiable certificate. This certificate can be saved on a digital device like a smartphone, tablet, laptop, etc. or stored in DigiLocker, from where it can be digitally shared as and when required as a proof of vaccination. Similarly, at entry points where such certification is required, example in malls, office complexes, public events, etc., it may be shown in both digital and physical forms. However, there may be instances where an entity does not need to see the certificate in full and would just need to know whether an individual has been vaccinated or not. BJP President JP Nadda has said on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's birthday on the 17th of September, the BJP will pitch in on a large-scale nationwide vaccination campaign. He added that the BJP's workers at booth level will help people get vaccinated against COVID-19. Earlier, BJP National General Secretary Tarun Chugh, D. Purandeshwari and Shiv Prakash met at the BJP President's residence. All these leaders have been instrumental in forming a team of the BJP's health volunteers during Corona pandemic. The report on this entire exercise was handed over to the BJP President.
सत्रह तारीख को यशस्वी प्रधानमंत्री जी के जन्मदिन के अवसर पर विशेष आह्वान पर हमारे कार्यकर्ता बड़ी संख्या में वैक्सीनेशन में अपना योगदान करेंगे और हर बूथ से कोई भी व्यक्ति वैक्सीनेशन में छूट न जाए, इसका हम एक एग्जॉस्टिव प्लानिंग के साथ 17 तारीख की तैयारी करेंगे। 11 तारीख को मैं एक मैसेज भी दूंगा। 13 तारीख को मैं सभी प्रदेश के अध्यक्ष और महामंत्री संगठन के साथ चर्चा भी करूंगा और उसके बाद 15 तारीख को इन सभी जो हमारे उस समय तक 7 लाख क्रॉस कर जाएंगे ऐसे वॉलंटियर्स के साथ मैं डायरेक्ट रूबरू भी चर्चा करते हुए उनको 17 तारीख का आह्वान करने वाला हूं और 17 तारीख को इस कार्यक्रम को करूंगा।
Now, 30th of September is the date which has been set for the holding of 3 crucial by-elections in West Bengal. The all-important battle would be for the Bhabanipur seat. Apart from Shamsherganj and Jangipur, Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee filed her nomination papers for the Bhabanipur seat today, while the BJP announced the fielding of post-West Bengal election poll violence litigant and firebrand lawyer Priyanka Tibrewal. Here's more.
Stage is set for by-polls for 3 assembly seats in West Bengal, which are scheduled to be held on September 30th. These 3 seats are Bhabanipur, Shamsherganj and Jangipur. The most important of these 3 seats is the Bhabanipur assembly seat, from where Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee filed her nomination on Friday. Meanwhile, the BJP has fielded Priyanka Tibrewal to contest against Trinamool Congress candidate and West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee from the Bhabanipur constituency. Priyanka Tibrewal is a lawyer by profession and an active worker of the BJP. In the past, she has held the post of Vice President of the BJP's youth wing, Bharatiya Janata Yuva Morcha, in West Bengal. Moreover, Tibrewal is one of the petitioners in the post-poll violence case against the Mamata-led TMC government in Calcutta High Court. Priyanka contested the assembly elections this year from NTLA but was defeated.
भारतीय जनता पार्टी भवानीपुर से चुनाव पूरी ताकत के साथ लड़ेगी। हमने प्रियंका टिब्बरवाल के कैंडिडेचर की घोषणा करी है। हम अपनी पूरी ताकत, हमारे कार्यकर्ताओं का हुजूम और भवानीपुर की जनता के समर्थन से ममता बनर्जी को दोबारा जैसे नंदीग्राम में हराया था वैसे ही भवानीपुर में भी हराएंगे।
The BJP is trying its level best to give a tough fight to Mamata Banerjee-led TMC. The party has fielded Milan Ghosh from Shamsherganj and Sujit Das from Jangipur.
ममता जी बंगाल की नकारी हुई नेता हैं, केवल नकारी हुई नहीं, हारी हुई नेता हैं। उनके अहंकार को बंगाल की जनता ने गत विधानसभा चुनाव में हराया था, लेकिन अहंकार की प्रकाष्ठा थी कि हार कर भी वो मुख्यमंत्री बनी। ठीक है, हर आदमी को अधिकार है, लेकिन जनता ने उन्हें नकारा।
The by-poll to Bhabanipur was necessitated after Sovandev Chattopadhyay vacated the seat to facilitate Mamata Banerjee's return to the state assembly following her defeat in Nandigram in the West Bengal assembly elections in May this year. Thus, winning this seat becomes very crucial for Mamata Banerjee, as she needs to win a by-election before November 5th to retain her chief minister post. On the other hand, the BJP has made it clear that by fielding Priyanka Tibrewal against Mamata Banerjee, they are not going to take the issue of post-poll violence lightly at all. With Shailendra Mishra, Bureau Report, DD India.
Now, after the removal of Article 370 from Jammu and Kashmir, the development of the region remains a top priority of the Narendra Modi-led NDA government. Agriculture and Farmers Welfare Minister Narendra Singh Tomar visited Pulwama on Friday and interacted with saffron growers in the region. Several ministers of the central government have been touring different parts of the Union Territory as part of the public outreach program.
The development of Jammu and Kashmir remains the top priority of the Narendra Modi-led NDA government. As part of its public outreach program, several ministers are touring different parts of the Union Territory. Agriculture and Farmers Welfare Minister Narendra Singh Tomar visited Pulwama on Friday, where he interacted with the saffron growers at the India International Kashmir Saffron Trading Centre in Pampore. The central government has so far provided a total sum of 400 crore rupees under the National Saffron Mission, out of which 266 crore rupees have been provided to Kashmir alone and more than 38 crores have been given for the India International Kashmir Saffron Trading Centre specifically. Along with the Agriculture Minister, Minister of State for Agriculture Kailash Chaudhary was also present in the program. An interaction session with farmers, saffron growers and other stakeholders was also organized later in the day.
चाहे वो सेब का किसान हो, चाहे वो अखरोट का किसान हो, किसान किसी भी फसल को करता हो, किसान के साथ केंद्र सरकार कंधे से कंधा और कदम से कदम मिलाकर खड़ी रहेगी.
The saffron growers said that earlier they used to get 1 lakh rupees per kilo of saffron produce, but now with better processing and grading facilities, they are able to get a better price for the priced spice.
प्रोडक्शन को बढ़ावा देने के लिए, इस इरिगेशन को फाल बनाने के लिए उन्होंने मुतल्लिका अमला से कहा है कि आप जमीन पर देखें कि कहां पर क्या प्रॉब्लम है, इस इरिगेशन को चलने में चलाने में कहां पर दिक्कतें हैं, उन दिक्कतों को स्क्रूटनाइज करके हमें बता दीजिए, आगे किस तरह चलाएंगे.
Further, Minister of State for Defence and Tourism Ajay Bhatt toured Kupawada in North Kashmir, where he visited a forward post along the LOC and reviewed the security scenario in the area. He also laid the foundation stone of a synthetic handball court at Kandikas Boys Higher Secondary School, built at a cost of 72 lakh rupees. The minister interacted with the youth club members there. Ajay Bhatt reiterated that Prime Minister Narendra Modi-led government is making every effort to develop Kupawada along with maintaining its scenic beauty.
देखिए, एक किस्म से जो हमने केंद्र से यहाँ योजनाएं दी हैं, केंद्र सरकार ने जी खोल के जो धनराशि दी है उसका उपयोग नीचे तक जा रहा है और कितना जा रहा है इसकी मॉनिटरिंग हम कर रहे हैं. अभी हम पीछे वो गांव में गए थे जहां हमने आज चोगल में वहां देखा कि बहुत अच्छा जनसभा भी हुई है, लोगों में बहुत ही उत्साह भी था. वहां के टूरिज्म को बढ़ावा देने के लिए हॉल्टी टूरिज्म को किस तरह से हम यहां आगे बढ़ाएंगे उसके नमूने भी लोगों ने दिखाए हैं.
Later, Minister of State for Defence and Tourism Ajay Bhatt visited the horticulture base station in Chogul and inspected the region. Bureau Report, DD India.
Okay, now though drones have been used for photography, mapping and other operations, the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has widened its scope beyond limits. Telangana will soon become the first state in the country to use drone technology for delivering vital medicines and medical samples. Telangana government has initiated a new project, Medicines from Skies, to deliver medicines and vaccines in remote areas by using drones. The trial run was successfully conducted in Vikarabad district headquarters. However, Civil Aviation Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia and Telangana IT Minister KT Ramarao will formally launch the project on the 11th of September. Here's a report from Hyderabad.
Telangana government has initiated a novel project named Medicines from Skies to deliver medicines, medical samples and vaccines through skies with the help of drones. It has identified Vikarabad, a district headquarter which is nearly 50 kilometers away from Hyderabad, to launch a pilot study for implementing this project. The government has tied up with a Delhi-based startup company named Sky Air Mobility for implementing this project. As part of it, the trial runs have begun in Vikarabad on a successful note. District Collector Nikhila, District SP Mr. Narayana and other stakeholders in the project has witnessed the trial run. The trial run involved beyond visual line of sight drones fly at a height of 140 meters, for which Airports Authority of India has given permission. The project will be launched by Civil Aviation Minister Mr. Jyotiraditya Scindia and Telangana IT Minister Mr. KT Ramarao on September 11th. Talking to DD News, Dr. Suresh Muniswamy from Indian Institute of Public Health said that drones help to carry emergency medicines to primary health centers in remote areas. The medicines can be stored in the drones as per required temperatures.
Present drone can carry 16 kgs, but again we are developing drones that can carry 32 kgs, 64 kgs and possibly even double that. And at that payload capacity you can even carry a human being and act as an air ambulance. So this is only the beginning, and as we go forward, more and more advances will possibly happen and we will be able to serve the entire medical needs of this country.
While the nation's focus is on administering vaccines to the entire population at the earliest, the drone technology is expected to speed up vaccination drive in the country in the coming days. With Narinder, Suprashanti, Bureau Report, Doordarshan News, Hyderabad.
And India has achieved 100 gigawatt mark of installed renewable energy capacity recently. Global investors' interest in India's green economy continues unabated in the backdrop of a growing demand for electricity. The government is trying to explore new avenues of energy resources to achieve the target of 450 gigawatts by 2030. Danish Minister for Energy met Renewable Energy Minister R.K. Singh to explore collaboration opportunities between the two countries in the renewable energy sector.
India is diversifying its renewable energy basket to keep up with the ambitious target of 450 gigawatt by 2030. Denmark, which is arguably one of the most advanced countries in developing offshore wind energy, has shown interest in Indian renewable sector. Danish Energy Minister Dan Jannik Jorgensen met Power Minister R.K. Singh today to discuss the areas of Indo-Danish collaboration in the renewable energy sector.
In offshore wind, the PLF is very high, the plant load factor is very high, and ultimately it's a very steady power, it's a clean power, it's steady power. Therefore, we have been working on offshore wind. We have surveyed sites, potential sites of the shores of Tamil Nadu and Gujarat, and they have high potential. So hopefully we'll come out with bids for offshore wind very soon.
India is also trying to lead in green energy transition with hydrogen as fuel. Government is all set to launch world's biggest bid in green hydrogen in few months from now.
We both have interests in green hydrogen. So I told him about our projects, and I invited him. I said that we'll be coming out with bids for electrolyzer capacity and huge bids, that's about 10,000 megawatts. And we are also going to come out with bids for green hydrogen. And I told him that I think these bids should come out in the next 5-6 months, less than that. In 4 or 5 months it should come out. And these will be the biggest bids in the world.
Denmark has also shown interest in the setting up of an energy island in the Gulf of Mannar with the potential to generate 4 gigawatt to 10 gigawatt of electricity. The Danish minister said that the green strategic partnership between the two countries will help in achieving clean energy targets.
We've decided to work very actively on getting Danish investments to India in offshore wind, which will be, I think, very important for India because you have very ambitious targets on this. You are a world leader in the targets you have. And we have some know-how because we have done this in decades in Denmark. We were the first country in the world to make an offshore wind farm. But now, because of the development in the technology, actually offshore wind can be cheaper than coal.
India and Denmark had agreed last year to elevate bilateral relations to a green strategic partnership to advance political cooperation, expand economic relations and green growth and create job opportunities. This also aims to strengthen cooperation on addressing global challenges with focus on Paris Agreement and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Abhishek Jha, DD News.
Public broadcasters DD News and All India Radio along with print brands retain high levels of trust among consumers. This was revealed in the latest edition of Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism's Digital News Report 2021. The report says in the public broadcasters are more trusted than other television channels. According to the survey, 46% viewers trust DD News, while 38% trust All India Radio for authentic news items. Other private channels are far behind in the list, including Aaj Tak, NDTV and Zee News. DD News family thanks all our viewers for making us the most trusted news channel in the country. Let's get to some more international news. Iran's nuclear talks are expected to dominate a meeting of the International Atomic Energy Agency, that's the IAEA, in Vienna on Monday. The 35-nation Board of Governors will gather in Vienna less than 2 weeks after Iran's new president, Ebrahim Raisi, said his country is ready to hold talks with world powers to revive its 2015 nuclear accord, but not under Western pressure. Raisi also said Tehran was seeking negotiations leading to a lifting of US sanctions. France and Germany have urged Iran to return to negotiations after a break in talks following the Iranian elections in June, with Paris demanding an immediate restart amid Western concerns over Tehran's expanding atomic work. Last month, France, Germany and Britain voiced concern about reports from the UN nuclear watchdog confirming Iran has produced uranium metal enriched up to 20% fissile purity for the first time and lifted production capacity of uranium enriched to 60%. Iran says its nuclear program is peaceful, that it has informed the watchdog about its activities, and that its moves away from the 2015 deal would be reversed if the US returned to the accord and lifted sanctions. Air tankers skimmed water from sea on Friday in an effort to battle a wildfire near a popular resort in southern Spain that has forced over 1,000 people out of their homes and killed an emergency worker. Since erupting on Wednesday evening, the blaze has burned through around 3,600 hectares of forest in the mountainous Sierra Bermeja above Estepona, a Mediterranean resort favored by British tourists and retirees. A spokesperson for the Regional Fire Brigade said authorities were planning to bring in 2 more planes and a Kamov helicopter to battle the wildfire, bringing the total aircraft deployed up to 69. But the flames were unlikely to be brought under control until Saturday. Sports now in the 5th and final test in Manchester has been called off in the wake of the COVID-19 outbreak within the Indian squad. The BCCI and ECB held several rounds of discussions to find a way to play the test match. However, the outbreak of COVID-19 in the Indian team contingent forced the decision of calling off of the Old Trafford test. BCCI has offered the ECB a rescheduling of the cancelled test match. Both the boards will work towards finding a window to reschedule this test match. India were 2-1 up in the series heading into the final match, but the test was thrown into doubt on Thursday after their physiotherapist Yogesh Parmar tested positive for the novel coronavirus. India head coach Ravi Shastri had tested positive during the 4th test at the Oval and has since been isolating with bowling coach Bharat Arun, fielding coach R. Sridhar and physio Nitin Patel. And British teenager Emma Raducanu reached the US Open final as her meteoric rise continued with a stunning straight set win over Greek 17th seed Maria Sakkari in New York. 18-year-old extended her dream run with a 6-1, 6-4 victory in which her dominance again almost defied belief. She is the first qualifier to reach a Grand Slam final, with the earlier in fact in the women's major single final in 44 years. Now, the 10-day Ganesh Chaturthi celebrations began on Friday with enthusiasm and fervor. The festival is celebrated in many states, especially Maharashtra, Gujarat, Odisha, Uttar Pradesh and Karnataka. Here's a report on how the devotees across the country celebrated the beginning of Ganesh Utsav.
मोदक प्रिय मुद मंगल दाता मोदक प्रिय मुद मंगल दाता विद्या बारिधि बुद्धि विधाता गाइए गणपति जगवंदन
Ganesh Utsav celebrations began on Friday across the country and will end after 10 days on Anant Chaturdashi, which is also called Ganesh Visarjan. Devotees celebrate Ganesh Utsav by installing the idol of Lord Ganesha, known as the god of wisdom, prosperity and fortune, at their homes or visiting temples to offer prayers. Amid festivities of Ganesh Utsav, various state governments have urged people to follow COVID-appropriate behavior and refrain from large gatherings. Devotees offered prayers at the famous Ganpatiyar temple of Srinagar, which is believed to be from the Mahabharata period, for peace and happiness. The famous temple of Ganesh Guri in Guwahati also witnessed rush of devotees. The prayers were offered at Lal Bagh Raja of Mumbai as per tradition, but devotees were only allowed online darshan. Similarly, on the auspicious occasion of Ganesh Chaturthi, be it Hyderabad or Bengaluru, devotees everywhere appeared immersed in the devotion of Lord Ganesha. Maharashtra is one such state of the country where devotees make special arrangements for Ganesh Chaturthi. Apart from Mumbai, Lord Ganesha was worshipped with pomp at the Dagru Seth Ganpati temple in Pune. A special aarti was performed at Shri Ganesh Mandir Tekri in Nagpur. In the view of the COVID-19 pandemic, arrangements for worship at temples were made taking necessary precautions. Many temples decided to allow online darshan, keeping in view the safety of devotees. Festivities were also observed in Delhi on the occasion of Ganesh Chaturthi with COVID-19 guidelines in place. On the other hand, many politicians of the country were also seen offering prayers to Lord Ganesha. Politicians across the country celebrated the Ganesh Utsav. They installed Ganesha idol at their homes and offered special puja. This time, eco-friendly statues were also very popular in the country. A special request has been made not to install idols made of plaster of Paris. President Ramnath Kovind, Vice President Venkaiah Naidu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi extended their greetings to people on Ganesh Chaturthi, wishing them peace and prosperity on the festival. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, a happy Ganesh Chaturthi to you all as well, and thanks for watching this edition of News 99. That's all we have for the moment, but all the latest continues right here on DD India. Stay tuned.